Alrighty. Hello, hello. Good evening. I don't know where you are, but where I am, I stepped outside just a moment ago and looked up, and the moon is absolutely stunning. It's sort of a cloudy evening, but there's this kind of like layers of clouds where there's this sort of bright white, sort of foggy cloud way in the distance, and then there's this big bright moon, and then in front of that are these like dark clouds, and so it almost has this effect of the moon being in between, right? Almost like it's closer than it is, that it's in front of the clouds, and I just love that effect. That it's setting off really, really pretty right now in the Hudson Valley, in upstate New York. Just gorgeous. And so if you're in a part of the world where you can experience that right now, I recommend you just pop outside and take a look, because it's a beautiful sight, and it was made just for you, so we might as well look at it, right? Brianna, how's it going? Southern California. So that means it's 9:30. Right? Moon's going to be in a slightly different position for you than me, but not too different. But it's you're pretty far away from me with respect to the continental United States, right? Upstate New York compared to Southern California. But that said, though, you have some beautiful views of the moon, and you have the interesting effect of the sun setting on the ocean, right? Which is quite different than here, which is the sunrise. So, although there are a few places in the country, South Florida being one of them, that it's very easy to witness both the sunrise on the ocean and set on the Gulf. And it's really I encourage you to do that at least once in your life. Kind of go through the full circle, right? From water into water. It's kind of a beautiful thing. So that said, there's a couple things that I'm going to be talking about tonight that I thought would be a fun kind of continuation from the past couple of days, right? And so yesterday, if you recall, we rather than evocation, or looking through the book and trying to find an angel or a demon or some entity, we decided to create one. And so it's time now to banish, right? To just let our little critter go off into the infinity, and hopefully having planted enough seeds that the will be done to awaken those to the truth, right? Because that was the goal, right? That was the actual intent that we put behind this entity, was to speak the truth and to allow it to be heard, right? And so I don't know if anybody here had that experience, but I certainly did. Here for the weirdness, you came to the right place. Oh yeah. We're also going to be looking at a couple of other kind of ideas when you're looking into doing sigil magic. We looked at the tracing on the rose, right, which is a beautiful way to create a sigil of a word or of a sentence that can be reduced using Notarikon and things like that. Can then just be permutated with Temurah, and you have this whole new statement that can be drawn, and it's kind of like a further imprint of the will of this entity, right? Well, there's some other ways to go about that, and one of the ways that we're going to talk about tonight was developed by a very prominent individual in the occult circles, as well as the art scene. That's Austin Osman Spar. He's an individual who is a very prominent figure in the Golden Dawn circle, but interestingly had some very unique perspectives on the work, the art, and magic as a subject. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about his opinions and more the practical side as well, how we can utilize his techniques in creating sigils and doing these type things during our work. And how that ties into the tarot, and what are some ways that we can use the tarot to maybe create sigils that are relevant to our particular circumstance, right? I've spoken many times, for instance, about this spread being relevant to the story of our creation. Everybody's is slightly different. It's based on when you're born and some other factors, but this could easily be, turned into a word or a phrase, and then once we have the word or phrase, it could easily be turned into a sigil, right? That's right, Austin Osman Spare. Spare. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And I'll have to say, within learned occult circles, the term was spar. So that's what I'm going to go with. Yeah, let's catch up on the chat here. Yeah, that's cool. Starting a new business, right? That's always fun. There's that energy in the beginning, and there's all this stuff that needs to be done, and so you're just like focused on all the stuff, and next thing you know, you take a breath and look at what happened, and this thing occurred, right? There's this being that's the company, the people who rely on that company and that you're working with, and you know, it kind of begins to take on a life of its own. That's the exciting part. That's very cool. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, catching something, or was in the, you know, kind of I'm on the end, the low end of something. It's kind of a sore throat and some stuff going on, but good. I mean, I'm pretty good. And there's some techniques that Spar had given us with respect to the approach to the work, which is very unique compared to, say, like a Crowley or somebody like that, and also his approach to the artistic expression during the creation of the sigil. Right? And there's a number of ways that we can go about that. I'm going to be looking at some things tonight related to astrology, and I spoke about you know, how to apply the astrological natal chart to the tarot to have a pretty unique spread that gives you some good learning. But what we wound up doing is kind of stopping at the first layer. There's a whole nother layer of this spread that it kind of reveals another level of magnification, right? And so as we go smaller, the details get more granular, and that's really what we're talking about, right? And so there's ways that we can tie all these things together to have one solid picture of the truth of the situation, which is always what we're striving for anyway, right? Isn't that really the goal? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we can begin. Shoo-shoo's in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, shoo-shoo. And so, you know, once we can find the thing that ties these together, we have the real ability, the actual ability, not some kind of new agey woo or some kind of misrepresentation of the actual power that we have, but the real creation of a form in this world that, due to its shape, creates real change. And that's the goal here, right? And what is that change but transformation? Transformation not only of the target of the will, but transformation of the self through the application of that will. And so it becomes a symbiotic relationship, which is kind of, as we know, a misnomer, because it's really just yourself going through the exercise from two perspectives at the same time. Luana, how's it going? I'm glad you're here. So let's catch up here again. This documentary about him a while back now. I look him up. I don't recall very much. He's a very talented artist, and I recommend anybody that's interested in looking into him after this stream here to take a look at his art, take a look at some of his writings. He was very prolific as a writer as well. And again, we're going to kind of touch on a couple of things here tonight about his approach to the magical process, his approach to divination and so forth, and how it might differ from what you'd think, considering his connection to these individuals like Mathers and Crowley and so forth. You know, the Golden Dawn system, the Rosicrucian system, and these things. So, but you know, the point, I think, and one of the reasons that I wanted to bring him up here, other than the fact that we're talking about sigil magic and how do you mention the word sigil without spar, is the idea of his sort of renegade opinions, and the fact that although they were so unique, and he frankly was not a fan of Crowley and his ideas, was widely respected, accepted, and is to this day studied with respect and with authority for his contribution to the art, right? So the beauty here is that anybody with the correct perspective, that knows the one truth, that has come to the one truth, can contribute to the conversation, because the story's everywhere. And once you've come to it, there's no going back. It kind of reforms the way you think, and so it just comes naturally. And this individual had experienced that. And so by looking at his work and looking at his system, which we're going to play with a little bit tonight, as far as sigils, can really open you up to fluency in some of these vocabularies that we use to access these other parts of ourselves, access these other parts of the world and the universe and truth, ultimately. And there's a few techniques that we're going to play with. There's one that I play with as a graphical means of adding to talismanic work with respect to sigils and these type things, and it's related to binary, and you'll see it's a very cute kind of system for laying out numbers very easily using groups of 4. It's very cute, and so we'll speak about some other things as well, and this kind of came up in the conversation yesterday, inadvertently, when we were talking about Lilith, where I had mentioned that there's a Lilith tends to occupy the souls of women through mirrors, right? And we spoke about Lilith at length, and so if you go back, if you missed that, you might want to go back to that one, because it talks about Lilith with respect to this thing that we can actually embody and we can become. But that said, Spar had a technique that he used as well with respect to the one truth, the goal of the work, and he used mirrors. And essentially he would stare into the mirror for long enough that the form would begin to change, very much in the way that you repeat the same word over and over until it begins to sound weird, essentially losing its definition, and it falls into just the sounds of the vowels. And we use the consonants as pauses in between the vowels, and we don't hear the word any longer. The definition disappears, right? It's the same idea, but with your own face. And so what happens is that you don't recognize yourself anymore, and you see yourself for the thing that you are, which is just another form in this world, right? You see the animal instead of the person. You see the form instead of the identity. And it's in that moment that you're seeing yourself correctly, because I've mentioned here a few times on the stream, see yourself through the eyes of the world and feel the knowing, right? And so see yourself, this self, through the eyes of the world. When you're in a state of listening, the world is talking, the universe is talking. When you're in a state of listening, the only thing you can hear is the sound of your own voice talking back to you, period. And when you're in a state of talking, the universe is listening. You are listening, the other you. And so when I say see yourself through the eyes of the world, what that means is be in a state of bestowal, talking. And when you're talking, the world is listening. You are listening. And so when you speak, the only ears that can hear you are your own. And what happens in that moment when you speak is that the part of the world that resonates with the thing that's being spoken awakens. And that awakening creates a vortex, a ripple, a happening in its environment. And that happening creates a domino effect, a series of connections that eventually lend to the creation of that will. And so it's important when we're doing the speaking that the intention is correct, that we are speaking the correct words, so that the thing that resonates is true to what our actual will is. Just like if I were to hum an F note, and you have a guitar in your room right now with an F string, that string will begin to vibrate across time and space just due to the fact that the notes match. And it's tuned to, it loves F. And so that string will vibrate in the presence of it, at the want of its presence and the want of its persistence in its environment, right? And that's the idea. And so the first thing that we need to do this evening is banish the entity that we created yesterday, and then we're going to create a new entity using some different techniques related to spar, related to some other ideas that we're going to kind of creatively come up with together, and put something new out there. But now we're going to do it with new eyes, understanding that the thing that we're creating, i.e. we're in the process of speaking, will be heard by ourselves. And when it is heard, it's witnessed, it becomes real. Observation, right? Observation is the mother of creation. And now it depends upon who's doing the observing. Well, what if it's the world observing our declaration? Well, that's exactly what's going to happen. Nirvana is a word. Samadhi. Samadhi is a good one. I think samadhi is a better word. Although nirvana isn't bad either. What we're referring to here, and this is the important thing, we're referring to the thunderclap. It's not like we walk into some experience and we're now in Valhalla, like we're now in some different environment. We stay where we are. Nothing changes except our perspective. However, that thunderclap completely destroys our identity and personality forever. And that perspective is the new persistent perspective, and there's no going back. So it is an absolute paradigm shift to your universe, and it is. And it gives you an understanding and a control of your emotions, an understanding and a control of your will, and whose will is speaking, whose will is being heard. And it gives you the ability to understand what these entities that we're talking about actually are, which is a little version of yourself. And so you can give them real power. And when you speak them into existence, they are motivated and they get stuff done. And so, interestingly, I had spoken yesterday on this idea. We've come to this one truth, now what, right? Doesn't this mean that we've hit nirvana? Doesn't this mean we've found that universal oneness? We've achieved Zen? So there's no point in going on anymore, right? Now we just sit in our rooms and... No, of course not. Now we get to really enjoy life. Now we get to do all those things we used to do that we were looking at like children and had no idea what we were even doing. But now we get to really experience it. Now we get to experience it with the magic of temperance and the true understanding of temperance. Not doing without, but experiencing to the 110% in balance. Not missing a single iota of the human experience, because that's what we're here to do from every possible angle, every eventuality. That's why we're all here. We're all the same person, the same intelligence that's down here to have this experience from every possible angle, from every possible perspective at the same time, and that's what we're doing. And so shouldn't we show up and participate in that? And shouldn't we, if we can, through our participation, contribute? Shouldn't that contribution be pleasure? Because that's what we were created for, to receive pleasure. And what better way to receive it than to bestow it? Because in that act of bestowing by receiving, we honor the algorithm, we honor the order. And things happen. And what happens? Exponential bliss, exponential ecstasy. It's like we're all together plugging into a battery, and each time another person plugs in, the amperage goes up tenfold. Add another decimal every time. It's exponential to a degree that we can't even really comprehend. But it's starting to ignite, and I think we can all feel it. That's why we're all here. That's why you're here. Let's catch up. Well, exactly. Sure. And that's kind of the point. Once you recognize the what and the why, that's really what it's all about, right? That's ultimately what it's all about. The same thing when we astral travel and when we channel. I've astral traveled here on the channel live, and I didn't leave my body. That's ridiculous. When you recognize where we're going, the place that we're going is a infinite space. So there is no distance. There's nowhere to go. The word travel is a fallacy. The word astral is a fallacy. You're going nowhere. Where you're going is where you are and have always been since the beginning of time. And all you're doing is turning your lens to see this world from that perspective, which is where you are anyway. See yourself through the eyes of the world. And when you do that, you access the past, which is this future. That's why the tarot works. It's very simple. You know how it ends because you've already lived it, and so you simply see the story where in the cards. You see the story in the world around you. You hear the story in the lyrics of a song. How about a couple of books here that we're going to look at? This one I have out because it has the banishing ritual. So we're going to banish our entity from yesterday. Okay, so we're just going to, it's a very quick little paragraph ritual. It's a pretty low magic. If you notice what I did yesterday is legit low magic in its purest form. Design an intent, give it a name, stamp that name on the universe and physical reality, give it energy, which I did through the act of burning it. Integrate it with yourself. I mixed it with the burnt ashes of my prior souls in my cup. And then it'd be done, right? And so now it's time to let it go home. And I have something here I'm just going to read quickly from 777, which is a beautiful little statement that we'll get to in a little bit. And then obviously, we got to grab a random page from Zohar, which is never random. But I have a nice random page from Zohar that we're going to talk about too. But I thought a great place to start, I have a bookmark that I had, and right next to me, I have a stack of books here, a couple of books here, a couple here, and one of them, third one from the bottom, is Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And so I took my bookmark, and I just randomly stuck it in the book from the side. And so we're going to read from just the first thing that we see on that page to begin the stream. So that's going to be the thing we start with. And then we're going to banish a demon. And then we're going to create some sigils, and then we're going to do some tarot, and it's going to be a blast. So let's begin with this random page from Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Looks like it's about 2/3 into the book. Okay, so what I basically did is I just took the bookmark, and I just went and just stuck it in there, and this is where it landed. So let's see what we get. In his rare treatise on salt, sulfur, and mercury, von Welling discloses a secret, not generally revealed in alchemical writings, namely that the alchemists were concerned not only with their transmutation of metals, but had a complete cosmological and philosophical system based upon the Kabbalah. According to von Welling, the universal salt, in watery form, is a positive cure for all the physical ailments of mankind. It is in every living thing, but from some things it is more easily secured than from others. Especially is this true of virgin earth. It is the universal solvent, the alkahest. The same writer also states that in the first stages of its preparation, this salt will cure any and all diseases of the heart. The anonymous philosopher of Leyden continues, would you now proceed further with our blessed water to the forementioned intention of preparing the tincture of metals? Hearken, my son. So that's interesting, actually. I've heard about that before with respect to Crowley. Talks about this elixir too, which we'll get to one day. That's one of those not safe for work conversations that we can talk about on a private stream with the Inner Order. You never know who's on a live stream on YouTube. And so we just need to make sure that we have, a room full of adults when we start getting into thelemic secret elixirs. But that said, though, there is something to the fact that there's an understanding of the idea that the alchemical process is really talking about the Kabbalah. And actually, I want to reverse that. I think that the alchemical process is at such a pure level, such a refined level of knowledge, that that's really the basis. And Kabbalah is just simply an anthropic example of it. It's sort of like a more complex version. It's sort of the spectrum of alchemy in, and then this spectrum out of Kabbalah, Eastern, Catholicism and Judeo-Christian, and all these other symbol systems that pop out that are just that one truth. And alchemy is not one of the spectrum, but kind of the root, this core of the basic idea of the union of these different elements in their relationship, right? Lauren, how's it going? Good. So it looks like everybody's here. I'm glad. That said, that was an interesting kind of random way to begin the stream. So that's kind of cool. And I think the energy it's a good place to start, actually. I've mentioned before too that the magician, the master, Robert M. Place, who is responsible for the Alchemical Tarot and the work that he's done since then with respect to the Alchemical Tarot of Marseille, the Alchemical Tarot of the Magnum Opus, and some of his other work, the Seven Mysteries. All of those decks really get to the core of the refined version of this knowledge. Certainly it requires an intuitive understanding, but I think a lot of us already have that, of the elements and how they play. But it seems to be a bit more approachable than something as complicated as some of the more intricate parts of the Kabbalistic system or the Hermetic system. But that said, though, it really is something special. So I'm going to begin with just the banishing, and we'll just start with that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say goodbye to our friend. And now, this doesn't mean that our friend is gone forever, okay? It's still going to exist and will be available for us to call in the future should we need it. But we're going to set it free. So let's see. We have a kind of a slight little problem, however. I don't remember. I don't remember its name. So, and I burnt the paper with its name on it, right? And I had it typed in the chat, right? And then, but I don't have the chat in front of me, so I can't banish it if I don't remember its name. We could theoretically rederive it, because I remember where their name came from. And what it essentially was we did the Kabbalah of 9 chambers to change the name, right? And so we could theoretically redo it, but I don't remember the sigil. Oh, for real? Emma, you're the best. If you find the name... First of all, if you find the name, we get to banish it. But more important than that, then we can have it for the future if we want to actually call it back. So in the meantime, then I'm going to put the banishing ritual aside. It gets to live another couple of minutes as our dutiful advisor that will comply. And comply with what? Comply with our will that it speak the truth, and that truth be heard. And then that truth be the one truth. So, let's see. Do we start with 777 or do we do Zohar? I think we should wait for Emma to do Zohar. So let's start with 777, because it's a tiny little sentence right here. That's it. Just this tiny little thing right here is all I'm gonna... Tavon, how's it going? Thank you for popping in. Haven't seen you in the chat in a while. I appreciate you coming. So this is a tiny little section. Let me make sure of this, because this is there's a couple of books in here. This might not be 777 yet. Okay, so this is Gematria. And the idea here is Gematria is a very effective and powerful tool for talismanic magic, for amulet creation, for divination, for all kinds of things, for naming things. But it leads, Gematria is answers, meaning that it leads to questions, which lead to answers. And, what we want to do, rather than playing the game of the opposites of question and answer, recognize that they're the same and find the true opposite of that, which is truth. And so there's no truth in Gematria. Okay, it's toys. You're playing with toys. It's effective with respect to magic in this world, but that's not the goal of the work. The goal of the work is not that. Oh, yes. Mysico or Sentis or Sentitis. Mysico or Sentitis. Okay. Awesome. We get to banish it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to read this statement, and then we'll go from there. Because although Gematria, Notarikon, Temurah, Sigil Magic, all these things, Solomonic, Goetic, all this stuff is powerful and can do stuff. Stuff gets done. Real stuff in the world. That's not the goal of the work. That's not why we're here. We're here to come to the one truth. And when we do, we can reapproach this information knowing what we're actually doing, understanding what a demon really is. And then work can happen. And that's one of the reasons that Spar is brought up tonight. And you'll see why when I speak about him later. Austin Osman Spar knew the truth. Truly, there is no end to this wondrous science, and when the skeptic sneers, with all these methods, one ought to be able to make everything out of nothing. And the Kabbalist smiles back the sublime retort. With these methods, one did make everything out of nothing. That's so brilliant. You know, and you can view that a couple of ways, right? We can view that from the respect of, what do? We make mountains out of molehills. We are the tellers of stories. We are the dreamers of dreams. We are the meaning makers, right? And we provide context in our world. And without that context, so that we can look at it from that perspective. But we can also look at it from the perspective that there's no truth in Gematria. There's only answers. And you have to realize that you can really kind of fall into this spiral of, oh, look at this number and what that means, and it connects to this number is what that means. And so when you're approaching it from the outer order perspective, which is the place where we have permission to insult deity, right? We have this permission to play with the toys and to approach it from a completely open perspective where we're unhindered by, the puppies are going to fight. Okay, maybe not. 3, 2. She walked away. Good girl. We're unhindered. When you enter this sanctum, it's holy. And when you feel that, you do not allow profane to enter the situation. But in the outer order, that's what we're here for, right? And so this is the place where we can really get a good idea and look at all the angles without the being hindered by holiness, by recognizing that we don't take the work seriously in the outer order. And so we can look at things like Gematria and all the different connections and have fun with what this means and what that might mean. But then when we do come to that one truth, we recognize what it does mean. And then we realize the absolute power. That's great. And you know what? I used to. And again, because of this system I threw together, I'm kind of doing everything on the computer now, and I'm not writing anything down anymore. It was all done on paper for years, right? So I thought that was going to be an interesting direction to look, is to start with that little paragraph, right? Somebody can look at this and go, geez, it looks like you can make everything out of nothing. And then the Kabbalist laughs and says, well, that's actually what happened. Everything did come out of that one nothing. And so here's another random page from Zohar, which I thought might be an interesting addition to the conversation here, what we're actually speaking about, and the goal here. I've always said that it's good to approach the same story from as many angles as possible, because when you're able to do that, it rings in different places. It rings in the heart, it rings in the mind, it rings in the body, and you want to kind of connect with each in its own language. So let's just tell the story one more way, and then we'll move on, and we'll start looking at sigils, and we'll start looking at maybe doing some Gematria related to the sigils, so that we can tie that together into the system of tarot, right? And it provides access to those who have the knowledge of the vocabulary of tarot. And so this is from Zohar, specifically the Night of the Bride. And Zohar is predominantly laid out in the form of a question and answer, right? A catechism, so to speak, and a conversation. And so this little portion here on the bottom is a commentary on one of the answers in the Night of the Bride, okay? And so this is the commentary that we're talking about here. The Zohar speaks of a great secret, of the sun coming out of its hiding. It is worth noting that Kabbalists often use the word secret only to explain, and as if revealed, the mystery is in the passages that follow. The reader should, nevertheless, understand that there are no secrets in this world. Man attains everything from his degree. Even in our world, in the process of his mental development, man attains new notions on every new degree. And whatever he considered a secret only yesterday now becomes clear and revealed before him. The same is true with regard to spiritual attainment. Kabbalah is called a secret wisdom, for it is concealed from ordinary people. It is secret to them. But as soon as one acquires a screen and begins to perceive the spiritual world, he sees the secret become a reality. And this process continues until he completely attains the entire universe, all of the Creator's secrets. Right? Right? Agreed. Especially books like these. You can't listen to Zohar. You have to read it, go back, read it again, go back, read it again. Then you get crazy if you're like me and you start taking the first letter of each word, and so you can't do that on an ebook. But you get the idea here, right? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, what is the ultimate truth that we're pointing to over and over and over again? The idea is that there are no secrets. I've said many, many times about the truth in secret, right? The truth, the inner order, is not available to anyone. It's only available to those with the ears to hear. Right? And what are the ears to hear? Your soul is always talking, right? And you can't hear it with your ears. Where can you hear it? You hear it in your heart. That's where divine mind speaks. And so, during this process, just like we embodied Lilith, and just like we embodied the turtle, and just like we embodied that piece of amethyst, when you're in a state of listening, the only thing you can hear is the sound of your own voice, speaking in color and light, speaking in sound, speaking in warmth, speaking in vibration. That's you talking. And so as soon as you realize that and you look out into the world and you draw your attention on an object, whatever that object happens to be, and you look at it singularly and you give it attention, and then you allow that attention, which is a mental activity, to sink into your heart, and now you feel the attention in the object and know that you're actually looking at a piece of yourself reflecting back, that you are part of this world just like it, because it's all one thing. And so that is you. And when you have the moment of looking at this object and making that connection that it is you, and that love fills your heart, you're there. And when you're there, you're in a state of bestowing love and receiving love at the same time. And in that moment, you literally embody the thing. And so we did it, for instance, with this piece of amethyst, which is a nice, loving piece of stone that has a really good energy in it that I've utilized many times in my life when I needed a little hug. Right? Or, we embodied Lilith, at least those who came along for the journey, right? And it's real, if you were able to get there, it's real. And that's the point, is that this is not a psychological experience. It's a recognition that, that's literally a piece of ourselves that we can access at any time once we integrate it. Once we allow that identity in, it becomes real to us. Just make some room here on the desk. All the good books are huge. Okay. And all the really, really good books are tiny, which is funny. I mean, the Emerald Tablet of Hermes is, I think, the original translation is 14 lines. That's it, 14 lines. Whole book. What am I trying to get in there? Where is... Okay, there she is. Sorry. The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky is an annoying size. It doesn't play nice with the other books around it. It's longer, it's taller and shorter the other way. It's frustrating. Okay. Here we go. That'll do. So, alrighty, let's catch up on the chat real quick. Less than an hour. Yeah, it's, it depends upon the toy. I used to have a, here she is. A Pomeranian. Her name was Bella. Bella could find and get the squeaker out, depending upon the toy, in minutes. Now, if it was one of the decent, that canvasy, parachutey kind of bone kind of material, that's a little different. And with those, she would get that thing out if she got the stitch. Otherwise, it would take her some time. It wouldn't be immediate, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the dude has arrived. Sioux City Sarsaparilla? That's a good one. Yeah, it's funny too, along with my books, I went through a period, it was an unfortunate period of time where I lost my entire occult book collection, and that included some very beautiful crystal pieces that I'll never see again. A piece of zincite, which is so rare. I mean, you can't even find zincite anymore that's bigger than that. A piece of moldavite that was that big. It was anyway, and some really, really pretty stuff. What I'm left with is just the stuff that stuck with me because it needed to stay with me. Very basic things, but it's kind of a good thing. Sort of not being weighed down by those things. If the goal is motion, right? If the goal is motion, then that could weigh you down. What did I just drop? I felt something fall. Sure, I guess. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Let's banish our little friend now that we have its name. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write it down so that when I'm reading the actual incantation, that I have the name correct. So this is page 86. So let's just get this person's name correct. To pronounce it as Mexico. That's right. I kind of recall it being vaguely familiar to the word Mexico, like Mexico. Mexico Sentidas. Okay. Mexico Sentidas. All right. Okay. All right. Let me get the tools. let's use victory. Okay, so whoever's going to participate in this directly, simply take a nice deep breath, hold, get a couple nice beats, and then blow it out. You don't have to do anything like super rhythmic or anything like this. Is again, we're just going real like low and slow on this. We're not doing any kind of high magic, crazy Western nonsense. This is nice old school low magic, witchcraft kind of druidic sort of natural kind of. Okay, and so just nice and breath, get your oxygen going, feel a little bit of a high from the oxygen. Feel good. Kind of clear yourself and recognize what we're doing here is just being gracious for this little thing that we created and it, running out into the world to spread a little bit of truth, and we want to appreciate that time. And thank you for planting your seeds, and may they be opened in their time to those that received it. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to give it permission to go home. Okay, I'm going to give her permission to go home, and so I'm going to speak the incantation, and when you hear the word Amen, the work is done, and I will light the incense to call the end of the work, and that be the moment that it is done. Okay. And so just have yourself in a state of speaking, not reception. You're not a cup right now, you're a sword. And now how do you speak if you're listening to me speak? Well, remember, when you're in a state of listening, the only voice you can hear is the sound of your own voice. If you remember that what you're actually hearing, when you hear the world speaking back to you, which includes me, you're hearing your own voice speak back. So what you need to do is put yourself in a state of true reception, which is do not process what I'm saying mentally. Only feel the words. And when you do that, you will be listening the proper way, which means you will be in a state of speaking, because my words will be recognized by you as your words. Okay? And so let us begin. O thou spirit, Mesico Sentidis, because thou hast diligently answered upon my demands, and hast been very ready and willing to come at my call, I do here license thee to depart upon thy proper place, without causing harm or danger upon man or beast. Depart then, say I, and be thou very ready to come at my call, being duly exercised and conjured by the sacred rites of magic. I charge thee to the withdrawal peacefully and quietly, and to the peace of God be ever continued between thee and me. I. Amen. So mote it be. So there it is. How great. That was fun, huh? All right, we have this idea of not only making, but then sending off into the world. And so, all we can do is raise it right and then let it loose. You've got to let it go and see what it does, right? Geez, I hope we raised it right. That said, I just need a couple quick minutes, right? Heat up my coffee, get going, and we'll hit the next segment. We're going to actually make some sigils. We're going to try some new techniques. We're going to look at the SPAR method for creating sigils and how to give them some serious mojo when it's time to send them off into the world, okay? So I'll see everybody in just a couple of minutes, and we'll go from there. Alrighty, so I just looked at the chat. So Bella was a full-blood Pomeranian, a Spitz, German Spitz, beautiful black Pomeranian. She had a white heart on her chest. She was so pretty. Look at that face. Like she had that perfect kind of Pomeranian face. She was a pretty girl. She actually just recently passed away. She's the reason that Melanie is with us. Melanie's special dog. She's a little fireball, that one. So we have to think about what we want to create, right? And so, what's that? Brianna wrote a book and a notebook. Oh, no kidding. Yeah, if I combined my notebooks, I probably, I can't even imagine. Somebody decided my thoughts on John. That's awesome. You know what? There's a couple of journals that have been published that you never know. You find some beautiful gems. And so anybody who's willing to share their spiritual musings or their journey artistically can really touch parts of other people in ways that resonate. You don't need to be a scholar in a subject to know the truth and to reflect it artistically. And there's always value in looking at that. I had a very interesting occurrence years ago, a long time ago, where somebody who was a very talented artist was just happened to have been at my house with a bunch of people, and we were kind of, just having a gathering. And she had brought some of her artwork in the form of notebooks, multiple, probably 6 or 7 notebooks in a shopping bag, like a plastic shopping bag. And we got a little unsober that evening, and she wound up leaving without her artwork. And I did not see her. I didn't know who this person was. She just came to my house with some friends. I did not see her for years. And her notebooks lived in my house. Now, I understood the value of these notebooks. You can't imagine losing something like that, right? Years and years and years of art and sketches and paintings and drawings and writings and musings and poetry. Gone. She thought it was gone. Had no recollection of where it was. Didn't know me from Adam. Showed up at my house as a get-together with some friends. She left in a state of who knows what. And years later, I bumped into her, and she had no idea who I was, and I knew exactly who she was. She was burned in my mind to give her books back. Amen. I live in New York, and anyone who's in California knows that, we're a little lax with respect to that. And at the end of the day, I walk up to her, and I'm like, I think her name was Allison. And I'm like, Allison? She looks up. Yeah. I was like, hi, I'm Michael. I had no idea who I was. It was kind of cool because I knew I was about to smack her with like the most awesome news she's ever heard in her life. And I just looked her in the eyes and I said, I have your books. Wow, the look, like the awe of the moment, like it's like seeing a dead grandmother stand in front of you. In my face was the personification of this entire body of work that has been lost, that has now been reborn in front of her. When it dawned on her who I was, like the recollection of who I was dawned on her, and I said, don't worry, I've kept them safe. Now, it's been years. We went right to my place. She saw her, and like watching this moment of her, like, huge, right? And what I will say, and I didn't give her the full story, is that I copied a lot out of her books. There were some drawings that hit me in a special way. There was some writing that hit me in a special way, and it was very inspiring. And it was, she'll never really know the full impact. And it's so special to have that connection with somebody that she had no idea that she was supposed to lose them so they could be part of my spiritual journey. How crazy, right? And then they wound up back in her possession when I was done. And, I respected them, and I kept them dry and safe and, all these things. And she got them back in the same condition she left them in years earlier. And that's a true story, and it's a beautiful example of how the story is told to us. Our soul always talks, and I spoke to myself through this woman and through her art in a way that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise, right? And that just reminded me of that whole idea. Yeah, that was Melody. Melody's the one that ripped up, and that's just one of the albums. I don't even want to talk about it. She has eaten through credit cards, remote controls, glasses, like you name it. Yeah. I don't know how I managed to keep her away from my stuff here, but she respects the work. She leaves my cards alone in my books for now. So let's talk about Spar. He had a very interesting approach to the magical process. Let's hop into the inner order. Okay, because what we're going to be talking about here is a little bit of truth, right? And so we're going to want to make sure that we're speaking a little bit on the serious level here. And that was kind of his approach. Like, he looked at Crowley and Crowley's idea of the divinatory process and the Thoth stuff, and he looked at the idea of Crowley's approach to Gematria or to magical working. Specifically, Crowley was very, very well known for his contribution to the mass, to the ritual working, right? The group ceremonial working. That's really his big contribution, let alone his work related to the Kabbalah and tarot and these things, kind of fixing the order and so on. His big contribution is in the the thelemic system, his interpretation of the thelemic system, and the ceremonial side, right? And now Spar looked at that as basically blasphemy. Like, if you understood the goal of the work, then that's just trite nonsense. And it's a waste of time that stops you from coming to the one truth. It sort of keeps you stuck in the ritual. Like 90% of people who enter Freemasonry never leave Blue Lodge are recognizing that this has nothing to do with what we're here for. It's not about handshakes and secret words. It's not about, which foot you step into a room with. It's about recognizing the goal of the work. What is the temple that's being created, right? What is the goal of the work? And what that is named many things. Attaining knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel. Samadhi. I call it soul talk. But these are all actually bad words because they're implying that there's a separateness. That there's me and then there's my higher self. Nope. And I've even used the analogy, and it's a good one. You are not the thinker, you're the observer of the thought, right? You don't hear my voice and become me. You're just sound entering your ears. You're the observer of the sound. You're just observing the sound. You don't see the light coming into your room and identify with that light. You're the observer of the light. And well, it's the same thing with your mind. The thoughts aren't yours. They're a product of your brain. You're just the observer of the thought. That's half the story. Because that's true, but it's half the story. That's the truth and secret. The truth told openly is you are the thought. The truth is that you are the thing being observed. And so the way that Spar looked at it is that all this work is really just keeping yourself in the inner order. You never get past there. You never make it into the sanctum, where it's the truth told openly. When you feel that knowing, when you actually see yourself through the eyes of the world, which is yourself. And when you realize that you're the thing being observed, and when you're in a state of listening, all you can hear and see is your own face, your own voice talking back to you. It gives you the power to switch the lens and recognize, wait a minute, if this is me observing myself, then I can also be myself observing me. And then you're there. Welcome to the Inner Sanctum. And so what's the point of all this ritual work and Notarikon and Gematria and Temurah and black magic and, angels and demons and circles and sigils and, oh my. Like, what's the point of all of it? Well, there is a point, and then we're going to talk about that. But it comes down to making sure that when you do approach this, that you approach it at the right time in your work. Meaning that if you are approaching Goetia before you have entered the Inner Sanctum, you are doing yourself a disservice, and you are profaning a holy subject. Because when you understand the truth, the one truth, you now get to approach Goetia and recognize that that thing, that entity you're calling, is actually you. And so when you speak the words of its creation, the sound that you're hearing is not you speaking, it's you speaking. And it actually is created. And now that's not the case when you're playing games prior to entering the Inner Sanctum, because what you're doing is going through the motions, and you create your little sigil and you put it on your thing, and you cast your lesser banishing ritual pentagrams, you cast your banishing hexagrams, you've got your circle, you've done the work. You draw down the moon and whatever your magical system is, but until you've come to that one truth, you might as well, you might as well consider it sort of a child's game. But it's important because you do need to know the moves. Why do we do kata? So that when we do find ourselves in a situation where we need to defend ourselves, we're not even thinking. It comes naturally. So the playtime is necessary. It's important for you to go through the work of having no idea that you don't know. Having no idea that you have no idea is the first step in knowing everything. So we do need to go through the play phase. And so I live somewhere in between Crowley and Spar. Crowley was, listen, we're all going to die, have as much fun as you can before we get there. And he was a symbol of debauch without regard. And we have the opposite, which is Spar, which was a very sort of strict ritualist, rather personal ritual, and that the work be actual, and that you apply this idea of connecting the creative with the spiritual. And in doing so, he had things like automatic writing and automatic painting, and these ideas of combining visual imagery into the sigil. So it wasn't just drawn on the road, which we did yesterday, and there's power in that. But there's other power as well. So we're going to look at some techniques, some ways that we can use his system for creating sigils, and other maybe some fun techniques that we can even develop on our own to do that same thing, right? And so one of the examples that he used, which I think is a very effective method of going through this process, is this idea of, rather than doing the sigils related to the rose and drawing around the rose, rather what we could do is we could use our own kind of system. We can use our own kind of method and not rely upon any particular symbol system, right? And that could be pretty creative. And since it's creative, it kind of connects with our own method of communication. So as an example, say we wanted to write the word love in a symbol. So you could just look at the letters of the word. Right. And now consider putting these together into a single symbol. So we would just write the L, and then an O, and then a V, and then an E. And so this could be a symbol for love as an example. Right. Or you could also use the idea here of a rectangle with a square. Have that triangle in there as well. And now the E can be done a couple of different ways. We can have the E for just visual purposes, just encompassing one side. So you have this idea of this thing in the center that's sort of unified by this triangle, right? And then has that one line in the middle here. And so the final symbol would look ultimately like a square with a triangle, this rectangle in the middle, and then simply one line right there. Right? And there's a number of ways that you can symbolize the same word using these letters in stylistic ways. And it really just comes down to what's comfortable for you. You know, as an example, we can remember the bubble letters, right? And so, from when we were children. You know, this could easily be an E. And we can also put an L. Right, so this would be the L. These three would be the E. You know, an O would just simply be to introduce a circle to the middle that we could essentially color in with black, implying that there's an O in the entire shape. Right. And then we would just simply need to imply the V and have this idea that there is this connection. And so this could also be the same symbol. And now there's a number of different ways to go about that. You could also do something with your initials as an example. All right, like my initials happen to be M, J, C. And so we can just do something here like with an M, and then a C, and then a J. And, you know, again, there's sort of a secretness to it, right? Like, it's you know what it means. And the purpose is that whenever you see this symbol, it ignites a memory of the thing that you're trying to illustrate. Another method that Spar used was to combine symbols that were relevant to, for instance, astrology, or to letters of the alphabet in another language, for instance, Hebrew or Greek, which can be very ornate if you're not a native of that language, right? And so, one example of that would be if we look at, for instance, mem, which is it's toward the middle there, fourth one down, is the letter M in Hebrew. Okay. And then we look at J, which would be a Yud. And then C, in this particular case, we would use Kaf, which is right below the Yud there. And so there's this idea that we can draw, starting at the top, we can draw basically the idea of the mem, right? And once we have the mem, underneath that or on top of it, we can draw the Yud. And then we can draw the Kaf. All right? And by doing this, what we have is just this little kind of linear symbol that we don't really know what it means unless you were there for its creation. But the idea here is that what this ultimately is a kind of just a little pictorial representation of the initials MJC. Right, this thing right here. Right. And you could even look at that from the side, and it almost looks like a pair of glasses from the side, right? And now this could easily be incorporated into drawings that nobody even knows is incorporating an actual symbol in it, right? So that's just kind of hidden in the sketch, is this idea of my initials written out in Hebrew tilted sideways. And now this allows you to very easily kind of just hide this in a piece of artwork, and people have no idea that what you're actually doing, this individual contains your actual name in the artwork, right? And that could be used in a logo, used in, various different places where you are able to kind of sneak in your name, like an MJC, just tilted sideways as a pair of glasses on a drawing, or wherever you feel like that would kind of fit as a piece. You could also almost see somebody lying down. You can almost see that as like a unicorn. There's a number of different ways that this can be viewed. But the point is that all we did was pick the initials of a name. And whenever we see this, it gives us that instant recollection, that instant flash where we now know, oh, I know what that means. That it means the name of this creature, this entity, this intent, this will, whatever the case may be. Let's catch up on the stream here. Yes, how are you doing? Thanks for popping in. Let's see here. It would be great if one could harmonically send Putin a disastrous heart rhythm. Oh, it's like the men who stared at goats. He'd be replaced by another Putin clone. That's funny. Whenever somebody who is a tyrant is in power and then leaves, there's another one waiting. Yes, are your initials? That's very cool. Awesome. So then, we could draw a little sigil for Y. Yes, we'll do that in a sec. Let me catch up on the stream. I think we should do that. Okay. I'm missing the context here as far as I gotta scroll back a bit. Yeah, so let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at YES. So that's going to be Yud Hey Samak. Let's jump to the... And now a Yud just kind of looks like a little dash. A Hey kind of looks like... it's the fifth one down on the left-hand side there. It's 2 strokes. And then Samak, we'll see, is kind of like a mem, but a little different. Or we can do the shin. That depends what the S stands for. If it's a S or a sh sound. But so let's just start with Yud, Hey. And then we'll worry about the S in a moment. Okay, so we're going to do a Yud. That's not a bad yud, actually. I have really bad mousing skills. And I ran out of USB ports, and so I don't have room for my tablet. That's right. That's why this is happening. That's why I'm stuck with my mouse for now. Okay, so then, just fatten that up right there. There we go. That's a good yud. All right, great. And now we're going to do hey, which hey is basically, let's start here. Yeah, that's not a bad hay. Okay. Sierra, so that's going to be Samick. Okay, so that's definitely going to be Samick. And Samick, again, it kind of looks like Mem. It's sort of roundish. It's toward the middle, number 60. It kind of looks like a cough with a little yud stuck in it. So, I mean, that's actually a better description of how to write that. It's one stroke like the cough, and then there's a little stroke in it. And so that's going to essentially be like this. You go down and then across like that. And so this is going to kind of be there. Just get that one out. Okay, and there's kind of like a yud right, connecting that right there. And let's look at, okay. And so this is the yud, this is the hey, and this is the Samick, alright? Now hey is the E sound, right? There's no vowels in Hebrew, and so hey is the E. So this is one way that you can do that. Let's look at some ways that we can actually kind of write this creatively. Like you guys have seen this on the necklaces all the time, right? The high, that's hey yud, high. Right? Now if we did the Samick at the same time, it would basically look like this. So what does that kind of look like? How can we make that something interesting? Okay. Let's look at it that way. That's interesting. What I wound up seeing was like some teeth, and I can see eyes right there, you know. But all kidding aside, let's do. That's so tough to, yeah, I mean, obviously you can look at it a number of different ways and just kind of take these characters. And now using the spare method would essentially, you could also do a block version of these. So you would start probably with the largest one, which would be the Samick, right? And we just do that. And then on top of that, we're just going to draw like our hay. And then on top of that, we can just encapsulate a yud in there somewhere. Right? Or we can do a large yud, which we'll know is large, but other people won't, because yud is never that big compared to a hay. And then inside of that, do the Samick, almost like a. Right, you see the idea there? And so this could be an idea for yes also. That's a cute one. It almost looks like a fingerprint. Right. This looks like somebody doing graffiti for the number 67. Of the ones I've drawn here, this is my favorite as far as like a quick, right? It has the secret large yud. It has the hay built into that. And then there's that spot with the Samak in between. So it's a nice little kind of fingerprint looking. It also has a 3D vibe, right? Like I can see that as being sort of like cubed out, right? Interesting. Okay, let's catch up here. Looks like a light candle. Let's take a look. Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. Love that. There's even a handle. Did you really? So did I. But I'm an 80s baby, so. Yep. Okay, so. Let's see. AIG. We'll take a look at AIG. Yeah, I know. I have good handwriting tonight. You know what it is? I'm taking my time. Me too. 75. I was born in 1975. So I guess that makes me, I was 5 years old in the 80s. 1980 to 1990 was 5 to 15 for me. And I graduated high school in 93. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's do AIG. Okay, well, AIG is going to be Aleph, Yud, Gimel. Okay, and so let's just pop up the thing here so we have a reference, right? So Aleph kind of looks like an X, sort of. It's 3 independent strokes. At least I always write it as 3. I'm not a native, even I'm an Italian from Brooklyn. But the A kind of looks like an X to me, and it usually looks like 3 strokes. The Yud, which is going to be the I, essentially just looks like a little tick. December 16. And then we're going to have Gimel, which kind of looks like an L backwards, or like a J that is almost done. So let's start with the Aleph. And so basically I kind of start with like a line down. Okay, and then there's like a little horn going this way, and then there's another horn going up. And that's kind of how I usually draw my Aleph. And again, I'm not a native writer or speaker of Hebrew. Okay, but that's the gist of an Aleph. And then we're going to do Yud and then Gimel. Yes, Yud then Gimel. Okay. Now let's put the Yud on top, because why not? And now the Gimel we can do a couple of ways here. Let's see, because we can either do it okay, so this kind of, we can do the Gimel around the whole thing. Let's do that, why not? So let's do this is going to be kind of a big stroke. All right. Let's take a look at what we're trying to be drawing here. Yeah, okay. So that's just going to come down a little bit, actually, and kind of just fatten that up on the bottom. Perfect. Okay, great. There we go. Not a bad Gimel. Okay, so you can kind of encapsulate the whole thing that way. All right. And then, just clean that up a bit. And you could also linearize that whole thing as well by doing the Gimel like that. And just having a line for the Yud, and then just have like a, almost like a swastika type vibe. And so you can go like a, have the Yud as like a line going down, and then just encapsulate the whole thing. Do that on its side as well. Have your Yud, and then encapsulate the whole thing. There's a number of ways that you can look at that. That's actually very cute and almost has like an iconic kind of vibe, like a clever logo. Let me put that somewhere else where we can see the whole thing. Okay. So let's do the Yud right there. And then we can do the Gimel. Yeah. Cute, but you get the gist. Interesting. Go back and watch prior videos. Generally, I don't think there's anything magical about the particular alphabet, except that I think I've read the sounds of the Hebrew. Okay, the Hebrew alphabet is not magical. It's angelic. And what it actually is a well, here it is. This is the formation of the Hebrew language. Okay, so this is how it all began. In the beginning, there was nothing. There was just you. And then you went, I. And if that's I, then that's not I. And that gave birth to two. Then he said, well, if that's I, and that's not I, then what is this that I and not I are occupying? That gave birth to three. The surface. 0D, 1D, 2D, now 3D reality. Here's where we come in. That's the 4. The idea of 4 is that that fourth dot is actually in space. It's not, doesn't land on the surface, and so it gives birth to the first, the simplest three-dimensional shape possible. It's called a tetrahedron. Okay? Now this is descending from heaven, quote unquote, and it goes into our world, and when it goes through this space in between our world and the higher world, this is an idea of what's called the abyss in Kabbalah. And what this is a space that is this unpassable barrier between the upper and the lower world. And down here we have a different circumstance. But so now, as things fall, they turn. And what essentially winds up happening is that we become the 1, which is really a 2. The 2 becomes a 3 down here. But essentially, as this progresses, what we wind up having is this concept where we have the ascending and the descending energies meeting in the middle. Essentially, this idea of the descent meeting the ascent, and when that happens, the 4 meets the three-dimensional 4 of actual reality, and the 2 coalesce. Essentially, you have 2 counter-rotating forces that, when this descends, meet a one that's in the process of ascending, and the 2 connect together and create what's called a Merkaba. And what the Merkaba is a counter-rotating force of the 2 pyramids, tetrahedrons, that are actually unifying and merging into each other. That's essentially what we're seeing here. Now, if you consider each one of these as a wireframe object that's essentially just the outside edges of these tetrahedra, so we're just looking at the edges themselves, and you shine light through that, it's going to cast a shadow on the surface that it's lying on. Okay, and that surface that it's lying on is our world. And as these rotations rotate at very specific frequencies related to certain angles that are related to names and all these other things that I'm not going to get into, create a shadow, and each shadow is a letter of the alphabet. Okay, so those letters are divinely derived through the mathematical reflection of the counter-rotating force of the descent of higher into the lower flesh, and then our lower ascending up into the higher. And as those two counter-rotate, the vortex created is the space in which physical reality manifested, right? And now, when we talk about that God spoke the universe into existence, spoke using letters, not a voice. Those letters represent the actual building blocks of our physical reality. Those building blocks are physical, real things that we construct our world with. Because what is the world actually constructed of but language, right? That's the thing that we're actually made of. That's the substance. And so when you hear about terms like speaking objects into existence or naming an entity and these type things, what you're actually talking about is speaking things into existence, which is how the universe was created to begin with. It created with God speaking a word. And what was that word? Your name. You spoke yourself into existence and became that dot, which became the line, which became the surface, which became the tetrahedron. And in that moment that became physically real through the intent, space was created in order for it to have a place to live. Same thing that happens with emotion. When emotion is born in your heart, a space is created to occupy that emotion. And then when the emotion disappears, the space stays and it can be filled with something else. It's the mechanism of transformation. So what is space there to hold? All the possibilities of our intention. All right. Let's catch up on the chat here. Yes, much more than a language. Well, no, that's not true. That's all it is a language system. But what it does is it gives you access to the actual story. It's a language system that lets you speak to yourself. No, I do not believe that humans are their own gods. I believe that there are no humans. So hang on now. You do not need to stop asking questions. That's silly. So what you're saying is Hebrew is only angelic language? No, I did not say it's the only angelic language. No. Sanskrit is definitely holy. Sanskrit is real. But more importantly, that's all toys. The truth is that there are no words. There's only one sound that is real. And all these different things that are broken up is how we use it down here to play with toys, to give things definition, to name stuff. That's all it is. Language holds us back from realizing the truth, which is that we don't need language. A conversation with your holy guardian angel is a lie. You can't have a conversation. You're already listening. Yes, Sanskrit is also holy. Absolutely. Investigate sacredtext.org, and there's a lot of good information there related to the old Sanskrit as well. Sublimated Tantra. That's relatively accurate. Well, sublimation is the idea of a solid skipping liquid and going straight to gas. But what we're talking about here, Tantra is a part of it, which I don't speak about too much on the channel here. I kind of keep it when not knowing who's in the chat and who's listening, age-wise, I'm going to be setting something up for patrons only that's going to be related to the sexual alchemy on a real level. Not holding back at all. But so I don't really get into that, but absolutely tantric. The concepts of that are relevant. But again, from a different perspective than you might be thinking. It's with the intent of the goal being not spiritual, but spiritual. But the idea is rather one, like purely physical, like purely, like the opposite of samadhi. So that there is a, like I've mentioned with temperance, when it's understood from the magical level, that there is no iota of sensation missed. That you know 100% of the possibility of your ecstasy, and that you don't miss an ounce of that. And the only way to do that is to be 100% present in your body. And then you can investigate it spiritually later. It's a different type of magic, right? But I don't go there too often on the channel here, and I won't get too specific typically, right? But the idea here is that sublimated, it's really Zen Buddhism is the closest thing to what I'm talking about. Zen Buddhism, not Buddhism. Zen Buddhism is one of the closest things I'm talking about. And I think at its core, I Ching and alchemy are the two closest. If you talk about the sort of refined down version of this knowledge. The Kabbalah is the most complex version, the Tarot being the most complex practical version, but they're all speaking the same story. And I've proved it over and over on my prior streams, right? Going back as far as a new algorithm for a new Aeon, a new deck for a new Aeon, this will wake you up. All of those videos are related to the same story told different ways. For the math geek, for the science geek, for the occult geek, for the hermetic geek, for the spiritual geek. We're trying to cover it from all the angles, because once we do that, we recognize it's the same story told over and over and over again. So here's a fun technique I wanted to talk about with respect to Sigil Magic and for talismanic magic, which is what's a sigil used for, but to remind you of a statement, a story, an intent in a symbol. So you see it, you recognize it, and there it is. One example of that is the sigil of your name being spoken. Missy, Emma, Luana. That is a sigil. And when you hear it, instant recognition, emotional reaction, attention is drawn. And it's just a symbol that's spoken. Same idea when you're looking at a drawn symbol that over time, like look at a cross, you immediately know what that cross means, right? And so a sigil is essentially a logo, a logos, to a specific intelligence that's part of your form. That's really it. And that sigil we created yesterday, that was a real form, and it did occupy this universe for that year, for this day until we banished it, was real, but it was just a part of us that we gave attention to. And since we gave it attention, i.e. we're in a state of listening, the universe is in a state of speaking, and it spoke it into an existence. Oh, do you see how that works? By giving something attention, we go into a state of listening, which is half the mechanic for creating manifest in the world. The other thing is if you are in the proper state of listening, you, the universe, is in the proper state of speaking, and you speak things into existence. And so by us listening, we brought that into physical manifestation, and we can do it again. And we can do it specific to whatever thing we want to create. And so by using talismanic magic, i.e. Sigils designed to create certain intelligences or to bring attention to them so that they are stirred awake, then power. One of the techniques that I thought was really fun. Nope, does not have to be self-made. Absolutely not. In fact, there's only one sigil if we realize what we're talking about here, right? There's a sigil for Missy. There's a sigil for Maralista Shire. There's a sigil for all these words. But there's also a sigil for your higher self that existed at the beginning of time before language happened. Right? And that's the same as mine and the same as everybody else's, because we're all the same thing. I mean, it's, but you get the idea. So, a cute technique for numbers. So let's just for an example, take the name Michael. Okay, and so what Michael is going to be is well, actually, let's just do it here. So we see Michael as M-Y-K-A-L. And so that's 40, 10, 2, 1, 30. And obviously the zeros we can reduce. And so ultimately what we're going to wind up writing is 4, 1, 2, 1, 3. Okay. 4, 1, 2, 1, 3 is the name Michael in number. And so here's how we go about that in some clever ways that I just think is interesting. This is my own kind of just cute little idea, but I always thought it was an interesting way to write numbers. Essentially what you do is you create a little rectangle and you divide it up into 4 in your head, right? Or if you want, just draw the lines or however you draw them. I mean, neater than I just did. Let's do that a little better. And so what we're doing here is now, what this is binary. 1, 2, 4, 8. So we can now write any number between 1 and 10, right? So an 8 would be, or a 10 would be this. 8 and 2, right? A 6 would be 4 and 2. A 7 would be 4, 2, and 1. Right? A 10 would be 8 and 2. You get the idea. So now what we're doing here, if we're writing the number 41213, which is really just the name Michael, what we would do is that we would have a series of these rectangles in like a square. So you draw a square on your sigil or your piece of paper or your wax or your wood or however you're going to develop this thing here. And we know we need to cut this into 5. Okay, which means you need 4 lines in the middle. That'll split it into 5. And then we just need to split that into 4, which means we're going to need 3 lines in the middle to cut it into 4. Okay, and so you'll see what we have here. Now, we just write these out. So we need the number 3. So the number 3 is going to be 2 and 1. And so grab a shade. Let's make that brush a bit bigger. With a pencil, it's easier. But basically, we're going to block in 3. So that's 2 and 1 equals 3. Then the second line, we're going to do 1. So that's just the 1. The third line is just going to be 2. The fourth line is going to be 1. And that one's going to be 4. Okay, so you'll see that this shape right here is actually speaking the number 41213. And this can be done as colors as well, like with gradients and other things to make it more interesting. And certainly you can have the same concept with respect to a circle, which is much more beautiful if you have the right tools or the right hand to draw a circle. Now in this particular case it would need to be split 5 ways, right? And so that's basically 72 degrees, but you would just draw a pentagram in there, mark the spots where those 5 go, right? So you get the gist in here. And then each one of these would be separated, 3 ways. Again, be cleaner with a smaller pencil. Let's bring that down to there you go. And separate these into 4. And the same idea. And each one of these of the pentagram would be like a 1 or a 3, and it would have this shape, but built into the outside of these pentagrams, of the arms and the legs of the pentagram. And so that's an interesting way to build a number into the shading. Let's make that a little bit bigger there so we can shade that in. Right, that would be a 3. A 1 and a 4 would be a 5, and so forth. And just by shading bands, you're able to, using just the basic concept of binary, 1, 2, 4, 8, and doubling, you can write any number, right? And you can also write any date, write any If you're using the Hebrew Gematria, you would obviously use the numerical value of the letters to write those numbers, right? And if you wanted to go above 8, you can just make it a column that's 8 tall instead of 4 tall, and so forth. But the gist is that there's multiple ways that you can go about that process for creating interesting symbols for different. Like here's an example of one that I had kind of, when I was playing with the idea before. Those are both symbols for love, right? And they're, the word is in there, and they're both accurate from my perspective. And if I began to use them, they would become more and more powerful. They would become more part of my vocabulary, and it would become natural for me to use that, right? So, like we did last night, is this considered Thelema? Yes. No. Yes. But it's not OTO. It's not Builders of the Addendum. It's not Golden Dawn. But from the strict definition of the Thelemic system, then this does qualify. Although I'm not a Thelemic teacher, but that's what we're talking about. If you look up the definition of Thelema and what Thelemites believe, this is pretty close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's a great question. I would love for a Thelemite to watch my channel and answer that question, if they believe that that's what I'm teaching and talking about, and what do we address here? Because what they're talking about is essentially that the will is the goal, and knowing that will, and that will is not what you think you want as a fake identity personality that we're being tricked into thinking that we're actually the thing looking when we're the thing we're looking at. The goal of the idea of attaining knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel is fancy talk for getting past your ego and recognizing that we are the thing being observed, not the observer. And so the goal of the Thelemic system is that. How to get there depends on the group that you're in. Everyone is privy to Thelema as a system. But obviously there's bodies like the OTO and these other bodies that have their own system, their own rituals, their own rules, their own dogma, whatever they're, I don't know. I'm not a member of the OTO. But I will say that even in Freemasonry, they teach Kabbalah in secret. Even in, just read Morals and Dogma or look it up. You can get Morals and Dogma for free online. Albert Pike's this monster of a tome related to the Masonic methodology. But that said, though, how you define Thelema depends upon where you get the definition from, right? And if you're a solo practitioner or somebody that doesn't belong to an officially formal group, you're going to have a different understanding or a different experience than, say, something like coming from somewhere like a Golden Dawn system into OTO or, into AA or some of these other groups, right? It's truth. That's what we're talking about. Eckhart Tolle touches on it. Crowley touched on it. Lao Tzu. The Tao. Confucius, which I talked about a couple of days ago. Kung Fu. There's so many people that touch on this subject. Paul Williams, which I'm going to read from tonight. Das Energie. Great book. The Emerald Tablets. They're all speaking to that same truth. Can I add you? I don't need to add you. You're next. Just put your question in the chat. And so, is it Thelema? Yes. It's Kabbalah, it's Catholicism, it's Taoism, it's Hermeticism, it's alchemy. Nope, it's one truth. Pick a name, believe in it, and it works. And we're going to do that tonight. What I need the group to do here, this is for everybody that's members of the Inner Order, as well as anybody who would like to participate. We're going to create another entity tonight. And so we need an intent. Last night's was to speak the truth and for it to be heard. Tonight we'll just do something else. So let's just throw some ideas in the chat. And then we're going to create another entity. We're going to bring it into physical manifestation. Into the world for real. We're going to give it a name. We're going to give it an identity. And then we're going to give it life. And then we're going to let it loose. Which book? There's a couple of good ones. There's a few authors that you can trust, and there's a few authors that you can't. If you want to talk about Freemasonry, well, first of all, anything... don't worry about the spelling. We knew what you meant. But there's a few authors that I can recommend, and I can say definitely, and there's a few authors I can say definitely don't read. Right? And so when it comes to Freemasonry in particular, there's a couple that I would say that are good. But Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, is a super crazy heavy read. Let's just give you a little taste of Albert. So this is really meant for Freemasons. Can you read it if you're not? Of course. But there's going to be a lot lost just because you don't know the story behind it. But that's not important if you know how to find the story, right? But let's just crack open a random part of Morals and Dogma, and you'll see why it's not the best read. And I'm going to give you a recommendation in a minute. Okay, then I'll point you in the right direction for if you want to look into Freemasonry. The more the great Hierophants were at pains to conceal their absolute science, the more they sought to add grandeur to and to multiply its symbols. The huge pyramids with their triangular sides of elevation and square bases represented their metaphysics founded upon the natural knowledge of nature. That knowledge of nature had for its symbolic key the gigantic form of that huge sphinx, which has hollowed its deep bed into the sand while keeping watch at the feet of the pyramids. The 7 grand monuments called the Wonders of the World were the magnificent commentaries on the 7 lines that composed the pyramids and on the 7 mystic gates of Thebes. So, okay. And now we get into the septenary, the 3 principles. Being is being. Being is real. Being is logic. Anyway, and then gets into the Sephiroth, 3, 5, 7, 9, perfect 10, the Tetractys of Pythagoras, whatever the case. There's good stuff in here. But then you get into, in the latter portions is really just for Freemasons to get a mythological understanding of the initiatory process of the different stages. And there he is. So Albert Pike, you can trust. It's just literally the source and is required reading for Blue Lodge, as far as I'm concerned. Full disclosure, I never went past Blue Lodge. So that said, though, anything written by Milo DuQuette. There's a new book that he actually edited that I must get my hands on at some point. It's sitting in my shopping cart, and it will be mine. But he wrote a couple of books on Kabbalah, and he wrote a couple of books on Freemasonry, and but anything written by DuQuette you can take to the bank. Otherwise, Morals and Dogma is that's it, and there's a few commentaries. The Lost Symbol was a good one, but what was the name of the book? It was put out by a couple of Freemasons that were exploring a certain subject related to the Grail story. But that's a slightly different topic because, again, it gets into deeper mythology that kind of gets you off the path. So it's a fun subject, But if you want to actually review Freemasonry from the perspective how it approaches the idea of the building of the temple, and more importantly, what the allegorical lesson is, then Albert Pike and Lon Milo DuQuette. Well, here's the deal, Emma. And if we don't recognize that those are pieces of us, then they have a psychological effect that's damaging, and they control us. These entities are real, whether we control them or not, whether we deny that they're part of us or admit it. And if we deny it, it takes control. We release agency to the world, and we take away our agency, which is our ability to understand these emotions, these powers that we have, and that we don't blindly give into them, but wield them when necessary and control them and keep them at bay when not. And so the purpose of doing the dark stuff is to recognize that all those horrible things that we hear about in the world, we're also capable of. And if we ignore that and just let that run wild as a thing that we ignore and deny, that's not me, then it has the ability to come up in us when it's not necessary, and we won't recognize it for what it is. But when we integrate it fully and we understand that that part of us exists and that we need to embrace it and activate it only when necessary, then we can really have some good work take place, right? Oh, did you? Power of Now is going to blow your mind open. We all are. We are all evil apes. You want to see an evil ape? Let me show you. Who knows what I'm about to pull out? 10 points if you can tell me the card I'm about to pull out. Let's see if there's any Thoth nerds in the house. He just talked about an evil ape, and I jumped to the Thoth deck to go grab a card. What card am I going to grab? Let's see if it's on this particular one. There are a couple. I think we might... This deck might have the right one. Let me see. The name of the DuQuette book. I think it might have been Secrets of Freemasonry or something along those lines. You know, it's something along those lines. I don't know. I haven't actually explored any of his older stuff related to Freemasonry. Most of what I've explored as far as DuQuette is his Thoth related stuff, and the new book he's got out that he edited is different. He wrote one section of it, but it's a compendium. It's a different thing, and so it's not really that. But the stuff that he wrote related to Kabbalah is Chicken Kabbalah and The Son of Chicken Kabbalah are two amazing books that if you have any interest in the subject, read those books. See the baboon? He's a wicked monkey. So, sorry, that's more Thoth humor. So, and the other book that's related to Freemasonry, I would have to look up. All right, and then I'll let you know. Once I find it, I'll let you know what the name is. That's a source you can guarantee, and again take to the bank. Is that the information? There's no hiding. There's no. Yeah, he calls it the Chicken Kabbalah. Yeah, and you'll know why when you read it. But it's not like Crowley, where Crowley was the truth in secret, very poetic prose, very very complex on purpose. He would interweave 4 different mythological bodies of story into one statement, and you're like, you know. However, when you do parse through Crowley and you get to the heart of what he's trying to say, you see some serious stuff in there, and it's great. DuQuette is just the truth told openly. Like he doesn't mess around. He just is like, here's the answer. And I did the work, so here it is, and like here's the charts, and here's the graphs, and here's the just really. I wish I had what we have now. If I had that 25 years ago, it would have been just crazy, you know. And so that idea of the truth told openly combined with the truth in secret really works, because if you read DuQuette first, and you're just like, oh, okay, so I'm the universe, and the voice that I, is my voice, or what she never says those words, but that's what he's saying. You'd go, I don't get it. So when I look out and I see this book is red, that's me speaking to myself in the color red. That's my voice. And so what I'm actually saying is that that's your voice. Like this purple in my shirt, that's you speaking purple to your eyes. This isn't me. I don't exist. This is your voice speaking to yourself. When you hear that first, you're like, okay, I don't get it, but whatever. But then you go back and you explore that from different angles. And then you read Crowley. Now that you've been told the truth, you can look at Crowley and see the truth in the story and go, oh, wait a minute, that's what he meant. When he was talking about the black orb, or when he's talking about the whore of Babylon. What does that mean? Like, what do these terms mean? They have nothing to do with what we think. What are we talking about the angels and demons and the dark Kleepot and all these things? Because again, once you've come to the one truth, you get to re-access this information and make it real instead of wanting it to be. So this is the magician, and the reason that I brought this up was the comment to the idea of the monkey. So I just love the evil ape, which this isn't an ape because he has a tail. And as we know, if it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. Even if it has a monkey kind of shape. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. It's an ape. And that has a tail, so it's a monkey. But all kidding aside, there's very interesting symbolism as far as the Crowley system, the Thoth system with the monkey. I'm going to be disappointed if I can't shoot lightning out of my fingertips by the end of this. Yeah, well, okay. That takes some serious connection to the dark side if you want to actually do that. I mean, first of all, you got to get yourself one of these. And you have to build it on your own, right? You can't go buying your lightsaber. You have to build your lightsaber if you want to shoot lightning. Okay. But I'm warning you, if you do it wrong, it comes out of your butt and it hurts really bad. So, in the beginning, when you start shooting lightning, it just comes out of wherever it comes out of. I'm just warning you. All kidding aside, though, here's the reality. Twofold. One, when you enter the Inner Sanctum, if you get the truth, you will be able to. But not in the way that you're thinking. But more importantly, once you enter the Inner Sanctum, you will realize that you don't need to. Because you are shooting lightning right now at the tune of a couple of 100 times a second. You are the lightning. So, do you want to become lightning and then be told you have to be limited to somebody's fingertip? Or do you want to be lightning, which is striking the planet at will on 1 billion planets right now? Because that's what you are. How do you become it? Well, I've talked about it a few times, and essentially what we do is we recognize ourselves in it and then give it attention. And when we recognize ourselves in the thing and we give it attention, we become that thing. We turn our lens and see ourselves through the eyes of the world. We become the thing that's now watching. And that thing is the thing we've created, our will. And when we see it from that perspective, we personify it. That's how we become Lilith. And it's a lot of fun to become Lilith. When it's appropriate. You don't want to become Lilith for a job interview. You're not going to get that job. You might get a date, but you're not going to get a job. Right? So, why do we do this? We come to the truth, and then we realize, okay, we get to now go back and we get to create these manifestations. And so what's the purpose of doing that? Well, that's the idea, is the purpose is the only thing that matters. That's the actual reason for all of this, is so that the will is directed appropriately. Oh my God, Shushu has the answer. And you know, here's an interesting point too, Missy. Let's just look at this. Is it a wand or a sword? That's a great question. It's a real question. Right? I mean, obviously it's designed to, you know, rend. It's designed to separate things from things, right? At least in the lore. Like, it's designed to cut stuff in half. So it's clearly a sword because it's an active energy that's designed to communicate the desire to remove things. But it's also the extension of the will of the Jedi, the will of the Jedi, and the will is the wand. And also, you know, I am a fan of the Darth Vader redemption story, of the story of Anakin and the redemption, and that's why I use the red. But it's also a great fire wand, right? I mean, it's a very nice fire wand because of the color, the shape, the perfect size, right? It's a pair of chopsticks. I have the other one here, and I use them. Sometimes I'll use them in recognition of the fact that one's a sword and one's a wand. And so, you know, one is the will and one is the execution of that will, right? But the idea here is that, is it a wand or a sword in and of itself? You know, incidentally, fire, another manifestation of fire is electricity, plasma, heat, right? These are all qualities of the wand, of fire energy. And so, you know, I see this as a wand, but I also see it as, I was going to say chopstick. Okay, well, it is a chopstick. You're not being rude by being honest. This is a chopstick, but it's a wand. This is an incense holder, but it's the cup that I hold my ashes in. Right, this is an incense holder. This is a pocket knife. But it's white to represent air. And this is my sword when I do my ritual work. Right? And I keep it dirty to remind myself of clean divine mind. What about this? This is my John D. This is my little magician. And now what's he wearing on his head? This is a ring that I usually wear on my pinky. It's a heart. And so I thought it'd be appropriate to have an upside down heart as his crown. Why? For the cup, the downward pointing cup pouring into divine mind. How beautiful, right? And now, what is that? It's a little figurine, but it really is not. It's pointing to a very beautiful truth, which is that the mind of the magician, the magus, is cleaned by divine love. Mind and mind don't connect. Heart and heart don't connect. It has to be reversed. And how do we know that? Because the order matters, and I've proved it multiple times with the vortex. Things get swapped on the way down, and so they appear opposite. Find the second opposite, and you found the truth there. So let's see here. Do you? The Two of Wands. You know, it's I love these chopsticks, but they're hard to use. And you know, they're, first of all, they're tapered. All right? And so anyone who actually uses chopsticks knows how annoying that is. That they're smaller on the end, right? And so they're hard to actually grab because they're sort of slippery. The pair I actually use are a little more square, and they have a decent texture on the tip, so I can actually grab food. You know, I don't know. My little Quilo technique still gets the food into my mouth, but these are hard. This is difficult. I don't do good with the tapered, you know. But it's the idea. But this is my wand that I do actual real ritual magic with. Okay, just to be clear. It's a pencil. This is a pencil. Made out of wood. But this is my wand. And I do a lot of magic with this wand. This wand has done a lot of Gematria. This wand has done a lot of sigils. This wand has done a lot of, directing energy. This wand has done a lot of beautiful things for beautiful people. And the whole idea is that my intent for the work, not, a fancy smancy created magical item, but a magical item that has real power. Right now, like here's, for instance, a precision piece of magical apparatus. Right, it's a pentacle that's designed. This is one of the seals of Solomon. Okay, it's a beautiful seal. This is the seal of Jupiter. It's the third seal of Jupiter. Has the holy name on the back, precisionally carved. The prayers are perfect. Gorgeous little piece, right? But now, this is very, very powerful magic, right? But now this pentacle, which is manufactured, is no more powerful than this, which is just a piece of crystal that God made with a piece of copper wrapped around it. But there's very specific intent was designed into each one of these beads having a certain goal, and each one of those beads has a story that it tells, right, of the elements and of that combined product. And the lens that this is seeing through, that lens has seen a lot of magic. There's a lot of ghosts in there. Now, which one is more powerful? Like, which one of these is more? This is a $2 copper piece of jewelry I got from a yard sale. This heart. No, I'm sorry, from a thrift shop. Right. This is the one she wears? Yeah, this is. I use this specific one because of my affinity toward Jupiter and Saturn. My other two are the first and second of Saturn. My planets are Saturn and Jupiter. At least my magical self. But that's very cool that she wears Jupiter. Oh, the heart. And this is very special. If you consider the symbolism of the heart upside down, right? Like we've learned what that means. For those that are new, let's go to the box. The cup. Pouring down, right? The mirror. Yeah. The mirror is there to fool us into thinking that it exists. This is what we're talking about here. So now the kit's going to come with a couple of toys. The wheel and the sigil, right? So that you can make your sigils, you can do your deacon work. Right? It'll have the stuff related to doing Gematria, the 9 chambers, right? As well as instructions for the March of the Court and the Rise of the Proletary. Right? All of the information is related to that. A larger wheel, the instructions for the actual the secret of the ascent and descent in large form, which will be printed nicely, obviously, on gloss paper. But this is the idea that we're talking about. The fact that in the normal tarot order is wand, cup, sword, pentacle. That's it. Wand, cup, sword, pentacle. But now what we're referring to is the fact that the princess and the natural order of the numbers go in counterclockwise direction, where the order of the quartz and the elements of the natural numbers go in a clockwise direction. Now what we wind up having is these getting switched in this upper world that most people don't even know exists in the tarot, this upper world, where due to the descent of the abyss, things get swapped. And so the fact that this is what we see down here means that's what actually exists up there. Do you understand the difference here? And now what happens is that divine mind enters profane heart, divine heart enters profane mind. So by having the heart on the head refers to the fact that our profane mind is washed clean by divine love, and that our heart is the container for divine mind. Okay? And so when I use the upside down ring on the head, it's just reminding me of the fact that divine mind enters through the heart, and divine heart enters through the mind. Feel the knowing, right? That's the idea of feeling knowing. Where do you know the truth? In your heart. You feel it in your heart. And when you're attempting to speak to somebody the truth, you speak to their heart, not their head. Okay. But you get the idea, so let's catch up on here. Third wedding anniversary is the 13th, and one thing is beating each other up. Oh, I love that. I'm a big fan of sushi, too. Big fan. Proper sushi. Although, I could live on Korean barbecue and Indian food. I mean, I just could live on those two things. Curry goat all day long. I could eat curry goat for like 2 out of 3 meals. There's a place up the road from me. Now listen, I live in a small town. My town is this big. In upstate New York. And there's a place up the road that's owned by an authentic Indian family named Namaste. That is like legit, authentic Indian food. What are the chances in my tiny little town that I could throw a rock and hit authentic Indian food in upstate New York? I mean, like the odds of that? So lucky. So lucky. Okay, let's see here. The most powerful thing is your hand when you punch someone's face with it. Violence is a last resort, yet it settles scores and... Okay. Yep. It's kind of hard to argue that. I think what's more powerful is being punched in the face and still having the power to continue to move forward. The person doing the punching has nothing else than the punch. Getting punched in the face and continuing to walk kind of shuts that person down, because now all they have is the punch and it didn't work. I haven't even resorted to punching. I'm just still walking through your punch. But more important than that is the idea of recognizing that what violence is necessary for is imminent harm. Stop it before it now harm. Let's define harm. Okay. Harm is not hurting or hurting. If someone punches you in the face, that's not harm. It hurts. Might cause a temporary injury or a bruise, especially if it's somebody that you didn't want to see it and witnesses you get punched in the face. That's not harm. That's a momentary lapse of ego, a momentary lapse of self-esteem. Kind of like when you trip in front of a pretty girl, or you thought you were just going to cough and you squeezed one out of the wrong end in front of everybody, right? Is that harmful? Not really. It's a temporary setback. So getting punched in the face isn't really that harmful. What's harmful is allowing yourself to get punched and then walking away. Rather walk through it. Turn the other cheek. Oh, did you want to punch me in the face? Well, here's my other cheek. Get it out. Okay, you feel better now? Can we be friends? Okay, good, because we got work to do, man. There's a whole planet to wake up, and all we need to do is to tell them the truth, and you're sitting here punching strangers in the face instead of recognizing that you just hit yourself, and together we can wake everyone up to that truth. If you need to punch me again, go ahead. I'd prefer you don't, but I can take it. If it'll wake you up, go ahead. You know? Sometimes it's necessary. No doubt. Somebody touched my daughter. None of this matters. Talk to you in 5 minutes, right? And so sometimes you just need to like take pause and do what you need to do as a person to protect yourself, your family, your environment. The fact is that you can love the dog that bites you, but that doesn't mean you pet it. Recognize what it is. Respect the fact that it is what it is. And then get it out of your life. It can harm you. So there's something to that, right? Now, the most powerful thing in your hand is nothing. Oh my God. It's funny because I went to Robot Chicken. That's where I went. But you get the idea here, so. But yeah, we need an intent, man. It's getting late. I want to summon a demon. Can we get on that? Jeez. So really, though, we need an intent. Let's give it some fun intent. So yesterday we gave the intent of telling the truth, like knowing the truth and letting it be known, speaking truth. Let's get fun. I want to come up with some type of identity for this entity that's going to show real change that we can talk about tomorrow and go, holy crap, this happened. So let's just think about what that might be. Put out an intent for a certain event that could be witnessed by all of us in some way. And I think that we should consider that not just to prove it to all of us. Like, I don't need proof of that. Anybody who's been in the stream here and seen some of the stuff we've done with Gematria or Temurah is insane. And that's just playing, let alone when we actually do real stuff. Right? So, but we need like a real intent that is demonstrable. Because I came to some truth, but I can't say that it was because of our little friend. But like cracking a random book, or cracking a random song lyric, and suddenly seeing this flood of truth come from that is really something special. So, but we're going to use the binary method to have like a little interest in the artwork in it. We'll use the Osmond Spar method. We'll use the some Pound X. We'll do a proper sigil on the rose. And we'll make it happen. Okay, so that said, I need to brew a cup of coffee real quick. I need to step away for a moment. Don't forget the magic of streaming for several hours is the beautiful magic of taking a coffee bean and turning it into water. So, and I've been very successful in my magic. So, but let me go ahead and take care of that. In the meantime, then, what do we need? We're going to need. We have 777 ready. I have the Solomon here, and then we're going to wind up using all kinds of new stuff related to the 9 chambers and some other things, right? So that's going to be fun. But so just think about what would be a good intent that we can put out that would be demonstrable for us to witness over the next 24 hours. so that we can talk about it tomorrow. Transformation, not speak and just listen, lots of coffee. The transformation of coffee into, right, yeah, we turn brown into yellow on this channel. That's what we do. Right. We turn the combination. We turn the combination of divine will and divine mind, which is red and yellow, into orange, then combine that with divine will to create the brown of nature, and then we divinely, magically convert that back up into just straight up yellow, right? That's what, the resurrection of Jimi Hendrix from the dead. Oh, don't tease me. Come on now. Although, I don't know if he'd be the one I picked. Is that rude? If I could bring back a musician, I don't know if it'd be Jimmy. I think Jimmy's happier where he is. George. I'd bring back George. You're no use where? None of us are. You're right where you belong. You kidding me? Jimmy would be great. I wonder what song would you have him play if we can bring him back? Man, that would be so much fun. Mary. The Winds Cry Mary. You know what's a lot of fun? All right, everybody do this. Go out and get an MP3 of The Winds Cry Mary. And then bring it into, or you can probably do this on YouTube, depending upon how clean it is. Play it at half speed. Oh, that's not true. Let's see here. You want Jimmy to come talk? Okay, sure. The way that you want to hear Jimmy talk is to go and listen to it on YouTube. Close your eyes and remember that that's you speaking. And that Jimi Hendrix singing that song is you singing to yourself. Literally. And when you have that realization, you get to listen to Jimmy, recognizing that that's you. So imagine you're the performer playing for you, because that's what's happening. Yeah, but they understood love in the right way, right? That it was kind of indiscriminate. Love does not have a target. Not the real kind. If it has a target, it's bodily, right? But yeah, all right, so we have a couple ideas here. So let me go do what I have to do to take care of that thing I have to take care of so that I can come back and be in a much better state than this urgency of having to do that. So I'm going to make a cup of coffee, and I'll be back in a couple minutes, and then we'll find a name, and then we'll create this new being that's going to have a demonstratable result over the next 24 hours, all right? So we'll see you in a couple minutes. It's going to be fun. Hear me. This is the voice of your soul. Alrighty, so let's see. Let's catch up on the chat here. Okay, I think we're caught up. Yep, well, looks like we're caught up. Okay, good. Alright, so that said, let's go ahead and do this thing. Now, I added a resource as well here that we can jump into. Bill Heydrich has a beautiful resource that he's put up that I found, which is a great sort of like compendium to 777, where normally we're relying upon some just basic definitions that Crowley's compiled over the years with respect to certain terms that were relevant to the magical process, that are relevant to doing the work of the particular, whether it's Sigil Magic or whether you're dealing with tarot or these other symbol systems. And you want to look for the connections in these terms and phrases. 777 is a basic compendium. It's not complete by any stretch. And there's a lot of resources out there that are dubious, to say the least, when it comes to Gematria, where they don't understand the final letters or the different combinations of transliteration and what's correct and what isn't. And so it can be hard at times to really come to a place where you can trust the resource. And so that particular resource is one that I looked into and I have a lot of trust for. And so we're going to use that when coming up with the name of our entity here. So there's a couple of intents that I thought were really great here. To not speak and just listen. All right, so that we can remember that what we're hearing is us. And the point of that is so that we can draw attention to those things and to embody them. That's the point of the work here. So that's good. Transformation, which is the idea of the work anyway, right? The idea of speaking and listening is transforming. So we've got that going as well. Let's see what else would be a good intent. Because we want this to be demonstratable. I mean intent like, let's have the intent of a particle entering the sky so we can see a shooting star, or there being a sound or a word spoken throughout the day that we don't typically hear spoken, right? For instance, when's the last time you heard the word voluptuous? It's not that uncommon of a word, but when's the last time you heard the word voluptuous spoken? Two of Pentacles, Page of Cup, Hierophant. Let's look at that. There's a couple ways that we can look at that, right? I mean, obviously the Two of Pentacles is a powerful mojo with respect to physical manifestation. Then you have the idea of the Page of Cup, which the Page of Cup is really like that beautiful energy of a horse running down Wall Street. Let's think about that for a minute. You know, the Page of Cup is the one that sort of has that initial intent of bringing the heart into physical manifestation, right? That's a good one too. That's one we don't hear too often. Okay, so here's what it's going to be. We are going to witness a horse, and the word foresee will be involved in that horse, right? So that means that, for instance, there'll be a story on the news related to a horse, and somebody will say, who could have ever thought that, or who could have foreseen that kind of idea? Now, this could be manifested in a couple of ways, because the idea is putting the intent out and then getting it back in the message. So that doesn't mean that we're all going to see the exact same thing, but we're all going to wind up seeing something related to an equestrian energy that's in a state of motion, and the word foresee will be mentioned, heard or spoken or written. Okay? So that's cool, because that's actually demonstratable. If we do not see something related to a horse and the word foresee, then we know we failed. Right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what the Hebrew word for foresee is. And so let me just do a quick look for that. Translate. So here's the word. Well, let's see if this will paste. It does. Okay. Okay, so it's that word down on the bottom there that we're looking at. Okay, and now what this word is the Hebrew word for foresee, and so that's let's try to pronounce it. Make sure I'm getting the correct vowels.
To predict.
What is that? That's a lamed. That is a... I mean, it looks like a hay, but... we might be looking at a cat. I don't know, let me look at the... pardon me, I just want to check to make sure, because the way the font showed up is so small that I can't tell that second letter, and it could be a hay, but it might not be. And so again, I'm not familiar enough with Hebrew to just take a quick look at that and go, okay, it's a hay, or it's a ket, or it's a tau. The last one is a tau, so it looks like lamed hay Zain vow. See, I would love to hear the word pronounced, so this resource that I'm looking at is not helping me at all. Can I just need to see the transliteration, please. Nope, this isn't working either. See, this is why, again, if you have a good Hebrew dictionary, this is a 5-second process, and without it, you will literally spend a half an hour looking up the definition of one word to see what the letter is because of the font that was used. Like, it's kind of part of the process when you don't have the right tools. So I'm sorry for taking you all through that process with me. By not having the book means that you don't... you're at the mercy of the font, and I don't know what that font is. It's really hard to tell that second character. I think it looks like a hay, but the reason that I don't think it's a hay is because that second character looks like it's one stroke, and the hay is a separated character, so it looks like it might be a ket, which would be really easy to determine if I heard the word spoken, right? Because it would either be le, or it might be lek. So, you know, until we hear the word spoken, which is tough, so I'm just like, let's just copy this word and try to find a resource that actually does literal translation. Here's the Hebrew English Dictionary. Okay, Okay, forget it. Let's just ask the question we need here, which is that word transliterated. Yeah, okay. So show it to me. How do I say this in... Yeah, what is that letter? Wow. Come on. What is this one letter? It's, I just need to can I just speak the word. Where's the transliteration? This is not transliterated. This is not. That's translated. Transliterated. Transliteration is where you take English characters and associate them with the appropriate word so that you can phonetically speak the word. Like Abba would be A-B-A, not spelled Aleph, Bet, Aleph. And so you could easily pronounce that and know that the A is referencing the Aleph and so on. So I'm just looking for a transliterated version of this term. And oddly, frustratingly, cannot find a transliteration for that letter. To behold is chasad. And that's what that would be, chet, zayin, hey. So let's look at that word now with that. So that would be lamed, het, zayin, yud. Right, so... Lakazia. Lakazita. Lakazita. Lakazit. Kazit. Lacazette, I guess. Okay, so let's see. The way this is spelled, now that we've, would be, we got there. Okay, and so this is to foresee or to behold. So what we're going to do here is now look at the numerology. Okay. And so we're going to do Lamed, Cat, Zayin, Yud, Tau, 455, right? 455, am I right on that math? Let's just give it a quick look. 410, 7, 8, 30. So 455. Okay. So the first thing is that we have the name as 455, and so then the next thing we'll do is the Temurah. All right, so this first one is just going to be the Gematria. Okay, and now the Temurah is going to be taking that same thing and just swapping out the letters, right? So that's going to be Aleph, Ein. It's an O up there, but it's actually Ein, and so I spell it as A with a lowercase y, but it means O. The Ein. It's toward the middle, number 70. And then we're going to do, where am I? Zain is Fe. Yud is Nun. And then Tau is Samic. Okay. So this would be a funness. Finus. Ophinus. Ophinus. Anywho. Okay. Okay, so now let's just look at these two here, and let's take a look at just some of the words that are familiar first. We're going to look at 455. All right, so let's pop up our little thing here, and let's look up 455. Theft, signing, orphanhood. And what we're talking about here is the idea of foresee. And then we're going to look up horse in a moment. But so foresee, theft, orphanhood, sighing. I like sighing. A deep audible breath. Very cute. Okay. Let's look at 261. Scroll that a bit so that's a little more visible. Perfect. Okay, so 2 hills. God hides. Oh wow. To bind together and to fetter. A vow of abstinence, prohibition. Descender. Wow, how great is that? So let's see, this is a good word too because it refers to the descendants, it refers to binding together, it refers to God hiding, right? And it's that whole idea of revealing. These are all good. Now that reduced to 9. This reduces to 5. Okay, so 5 and then 9. Right. So, let us begin. So the first word is going to be, we'll start with the original sigil, and that is going to be Lamed, Ket, Zain, Yud, Tau. So let's get this to an acceptable size. Lamed, Ket, Zain, Yud Tau. So there's the first one. Let's just scoot that over. And let's do the second one. And that is going to be Aleph, Ein, Fe, Nun, Samek. What have I done? Yeah, Aleph. Oh. There we go. Aleph. Ein. Pay. Pay. Nun, Samek, okay. Nun. So actually we should start with a loop and then a line where you start and you end. Right, so that we know where we're beginning from here. And what was the first one? Alignment. Okay, so that started here and ended there. Okay, and so this is the second sigil. Okay, and so between these two, we have the option of combining them, which is certainly an option. Oops, where did I... Let me get those loops in the right place here. That should be... Yeah, on this. Okay, so that's a loop. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Lord, I miss Photoshop. The GIMP is so clunky when you're familiar with Photoshop that it's practically unusable. It's really like... Alright. What would take me 5 minutes in Photoshop literally takes me like hours. I'm just trying to figure out how to do something that is a keyboard shortcut. Okay, so that is the two of them combined, which is not a bad look. Let's zoom in on that. Center that properly. Okay. So that's a cute symbol. And what this refers to is foreseeing. And now we just need to look up at the idea here of a horse, right? And so this thing hopefully won't be, another 20 minutes of searching around for. Translate horse. Samek, Yud, Samek. Sus. Okay. Alrighty, well, let's do it. Okay, so that's going to be 60 plus 10 plus 60. Right. Okay, so that's 130. Just interestingly, let's find out what else 130 means. 130. To gather or amass, to call or cry, and answering. To be like or resemble. That's kind of great. There's all kinds of goodies. I like this word a lot. I'm down with it. And so let's look at that. SYS. That's going to be a nice simple addition to one of these sigils. All right. So we can combine that with, say, that one, or we can combine it with or all three. I think I like that. It's like an arrow pointing in both directions. There's a little bit of a symmetry to it. What do you guys think of that? That would be the symbol essentially for the idea of a horse, but a horse, and then specifically too the idea of the word foresee. All right, so let me just make some notes here. Let me grab my book and let's practice real quick, and so that when we do it for real, that we're ready. So horse and foresee. We're going to want to do, let's see, what are some of those numbers here? Because we're going to want to include some of those numbers into this process, right? So we're definitely going to want the number 130 for horse. The number for foresee is 455. And as far as the Temurah, some interesting stuff came up under 261 that kind of felt good too. So we're going to put 261 also. Okay. And so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to take 130 and we're going to just do our little box of 4. So 3 lines in the middle, 3 times. Okay. And so the first symbol is going to be just straight up blank. The second one is going to be a 3, so the bottom 2 are going to be darkened. We'll make it pretty for the actual thing. And then 1 will be just this bottom one. Okay, so one way to draw that would be to do a rectangle like this. 2 lines in the middle. 3 lines across. These 2 bottom will be darkened. And then the bottom one here will be darkened. Okay. So see the idea here. There's 2 shapes that are kind of created of this shape, which is the 3, 2, 4, and this one, which is the 2, 1 shape. And those 2 shapes put together actually speak the number 130. Right? And so we can do this in unison underneath it again as another square. Same idea. Couple 3 lines. And now we're going to do 455. So 4 would be coloring just that in right there, because that's the 4 spot. Just to be clear, this is 1, 2, 4, 8. 1, 2, 4, 8. And so the 4 would be the third one. Then we're going to do 5, which will be 4 and 1. And then the other one will be another 5, so it'll just be that same thing there of a 4 and a 1. And so what this little box is representing so far is the idea of 130 and then 455.